These kids whipping these cops' asses on video did not encourage me to think that all the funding that police officers are getting, it's working. Welcome to Raw Food. East Coast and West Coast Cal graduates hanging out and just catching up on the weirdness of this planet we call Earth. In today's wackiness, a group of teenagers whipped the behinds of two NYPD officers in the heart of New York City. It's one of the most pathetic things I've seen in a long, long time. I have so many thoughts on this.
Hit me.
So allegedly, it's a group of migrant kids. So that's going to be a problem for New Yorkers, number one. Number two, these police officers, they could have killed these police officers. So if it is true that they were arrested and released, that's insane to me. Number three, this is proof that we should not be lowering the physical requirements for police officers. We should be raising them along with the salaries. And I'm not understanding how in the year of 2024, our Lord, we haven't figured out that most police officers, at least in urban cities, are going to be dealing with people physically and up close. Why wouldn't martial arts training be part of the training? What say you, Jay?
Makes sense to me. But I saw an interesting statistic that pointed out that cops only need 5 to 6, no more than 700 hours of training. And it's a lot harder to become a beautician or someone who does nails or several other things. They require more than 1,000 hours.
That's pathetic. That's pathetic.
Yeah. And it differs from state to state, but in places like California and New York, yeah, it's kind of weird. And so maybe
I want Avatar cops. They should look like 6'11" Nazis.
And not Nazis, but yes, they should be physically capable.
I didn't say that they
job.
should be Nazis. I said they should look like them.
Okay.
Because you see a couple of those motherfuckers coming through your door. Let me tell you something. You ain't going to try to fight those dudes. You're going to comply. These kids whipping these cops' asses on video did not encourage me to think that all the funding that police officers are getting, it's working.
Yes, there's video, and they whooped these guys' butts. This is my first time seeing it. This
Honestly,
is ridiculous.
they could have killed them, and I don't support it at all. And now if these police officers had just pulled out their gun and started shooting at them, I would have been totally okay with that. Jumping somebody is the weakest form of fighting. And if you're going to do that, let alone do that to police officers in broad daylight, you're going to get what you're going to get.
Yes, and these were plainclothes officers, so these were not undercover or I'm sorry, these were not plainclothes officers. These were officers were in regular NYPD clothes. There's no way you could have confused them for anything else. And
wait, say that again, because that sounded kind of cloudy, Jay. Were they in police uniform or were they not?
They were in police uniforms. They were not plainclothes officers. They were in police uniforms. There's no way you could confuse them for
right. So like the hot dog guy or something, right? Like that, like you know they're cops, and they threw them on the ground to whip their asses, and a couple of them kicked the cops in the heads. I mean, it's horrible, and I hope those police officers are okay. Just because I don't support institutionalized law enforcement doesn't mean I want any harm to any individual police officer. And what I saw was shameful. And quite frankly, when they arrested those kids, the first thing they should have done is call their parents. If they are indeed migrants, then as far as I'm concerned, those kids could be immediately deported.
Yes, and the video shows that it starts out where the cops are just kind of asking them to move it along. Mm-hmm. Looks like somebody started something and then they tried to arrest an individual and that person physically resists. The cops are trying to get a hold of that person, and then their 4 homeboys
start bugging out.
Their 4 companions, the 4 people they were with, came and started fighting the cops. And the whole thing's on camera. It doesn't look like the cops started this thing. We'll see. The camera jumps. It goes from, hey, move it along, nothing to see here. And then all of a sudden,
thump. Yeah. I mean, I don't understand where the footage is in between and what led up to that, but it looks terrible.
5 on 2.
Terrible. And I'm noticing that the incidents like this and just violent incidents on the coastal cities or in the urban cities is increasingly younger and younger. And that's disturbing to me. And I think a lot what a lot of that has to
Oh
do
my God.
with lack of trades in school. This is a generation of kids who are graduating without being able to read and write on grade level. And there are no jobs because all the little holiday jobs, part-time jobs, summer jobs that kids used to do, now migrants do, because I guess Americans woke up one day and decided that kids were too good for these jobs. I don't know. It's just a very weird time that we're living in, but nothing about seeing those kids whip those cops' asses made me feel any confidence in the police force. And I really have to question, what are the police doing with all the money that they get?
Well, let's also be honest. Those cops aren't really allowed. They can't pull out a gun in that situation. If they had pulled out a gun and shot one
Really?
of
Getting
them,
jumped by
then
5 kids, you can't pull out a gun in that situation?
I think they're afraid to pull out a gun at this point. And if they pulled out a gun and shot one of them, then everybody would be screaming bloody murder. There'd be people in the streets, and especially if they shot a migrant.
Really? I don't know. I feel differently about this situation
I
specifically
know you
because we
feel
have the
differently,
video. You know what I
but
mean?
in New
We have the
York,
video of them beating their asses. I mean, really? Would we be opposed to them pulling out their gun? What about their tasers? What about their pepper spray? What about their batons? But it didn't
yeah.
even seem like they had the physical strength to do that. And that to me is concerning.
Well, they were getting jumped, so they didn't have a chance to pull those things out
Oh,
because they're already on the ground. They're on the ground with one. 2 cops are on the ground with one, and then the other 4 jump in. One of them tried to kick the cop so hard that he actually fell down himself. He's kicking
yeah.
with
I
his
mean, they
right
kicked
foot
them in
as
their
hard
head.
as he can, and he kicked so hard that he slipped and fell. That means you're kicking with a lot of force. You are trying to hurt someone.
This was horrible. I mean, how this isn't attempted murder on police officers is beyond me.
Yeah,
And I mean, I understand that the pendulum is swinging the other way in response to the years of recognized brutality due to the systemic racism that is embedded in law enforcement, which is different from saying every police officer is a card carrying racist, because I don't believe that to be true. I believe there's quite a few police officers who are not racist, but the system inherently is. So that is the concern, which is why the pendulum swung the other way. But we've got to be reasonable. We've got to be reasonable. And watching
yeah.
2 police officers get their asses kicked on TV and not be able to defend themselves. I mean, those kids were kicking them in their heads. As far as I'm concerned, they were trying to kill them. You don't
Especially if
think so?
especially if they had steel-toe boots on in New York. If they were rocking
Anything. I
Timberlands.
mean, shit, you kick somebody in the head with a sandal, you could kill them.
Well, there have actually been people I've read of in the past that got charged with assault with a deadly weapon for stomping somebody in the head or kicking somebody in
Yeah,
the head.
man.
I have seen that before. In the instances that I've seen, it was a black person who did the kicking or the stomping, and people were upset that the person was facing assault with a deadly weapon. But I've seen videos where somebody literally jumps with both feet in the air and tries to stomp as hard as they can with both feet on someone's head. At that point, like, come on, dude. I don't see that happening here, but there's clearly some serious assault. And you say they've already been released,
Allegedly.
and they will have a trial date. They're just released on bail, correct?
Let's see.
I'm on New York Post right now. Also, Governor Hochul said deport them.
Yeah, man.
And
Come
these
on.
are
If they are truly migrants, and we're not just saying that, I don't know. They seem to have face masks on. So it was hard to tell what they were or who they were or what they looked like. But let me see. I'm pulling up.
Yeah, I'm seeing Gomez, Ezekiel, age 19, Calvin Servada Arocha, 19, Juarez Wilson, 21, Yorman Revron, 24. This happened, I guess, 42nd Street and 7th Ave.
42nd Street
A
and
5th
2nd Ave. Okay,
suspect.
so that's by Grand Central Station.
Yeah, a 5th suspect, Yohan Boada, age 22, was arrested on Monday. Okay, Manhattan
This is
District Attorney's
ridiculous.
Office said it is still investigating the incident and reviewing additional video of the alleged assault. So they're probably going to face charges at
Okay.
some point. However, this is going to galvanize the Republican base, the Republicans in New York. Everybody thinks New York City is a Democratic stronghold. Bloomberg was mayor not that long ago, y'all.
Right. Don't get it twisted. And Governor Hochul won this seat by the skin of her teeth, man. And the person she almost lost to was a Republican who is anti-abortion. And I find that astounding how close to winning that guy came. I mean, in my lifetime, I never thought I'd see anything like that.
Well, that's the thing. The rest of New York is nowhere near as blue as New York City.
Right. And if New York City almost went in that direction, what does that tell you?
Right. And New York Governor Kathy Hochul suggests deporting mob of migrants who pounded on cops in caught on camera attack near Times Square. That's the headline from the New York Post. And I know the New York Post can be a bit flamboyant, a bit
Times Square with
a bit hyperbolic.
And lead story tonight, Anthony.
Let's see.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
looking
I
at
know
it.
the New York Post can be very hyperbolic, so we're not saying that the New York Post is
Right, the holy
the,
grail of information. I mean, but it
yeah.
is a source. Let's see. I'm looking at ABC News. 2 police officers were assaulted attempting to break up a disorderly crowd outside of a Midtown migrant shelter. 5 suspects have been arrested so far. 7 more are being sought. So, I mean, that's over a dozen kids that they got jumped by, and they did get kicked in the head. Scuffle broke out. Several men assaulted the police officers, kicking them in the head and the body. 1 officer suffered cuts to the face. The others treated for bruising. 4 suspects were arrested. All were charged with assault and released without bail. That's ridiculous.
no bail is kind of ridiculous.
That's
the whole
for this kind of crime it's not. This is beyond the pale. This is assaulting a police officer.
And I mean, assaulting anyone, and also it's assault and battery. So first of all, if they don't have battery charges, then I need to know why, because usually assault is like balling up a fist or raising it. Battery is hitting someone with that fist. But if they're facing aggravated assault, then I guess that's different. But it seems kind of obvious that, like, okay, do you want to take up resources from the court system and go through the entire thing where they get a public defender, and there are, there's other cases in the court that are going to be held up. Do we want to go through the whole
NYPD Commissioner
court
Edward
thing? Do we want to go through the whole court thing, or couldn't you just deport them instead?
They should just be deported, and they're out of their rabbit ass minds acting like this. They've been charged with disorderly conduct and gang assault.
Gang assault. Okay.
4 of the men were arraigned and released. That's ridiculous. Yeah. They kicked those men in the head. That's intent to kill somebody, as far as I'm concerned.
And I don't think there's anything
with this.
I don't think there's anything racist about saying, yeah, maybe you should be deported, because if you're already here illegally, you wanted to seek asylum.
I don't give a shit what country you're from. You can't come here and pop off like that and you're like 12 years old. Get the fuck out of here. We don't need this bullshit. We got enough lunatics who live here and are from here already. We can't add any more to that. This is ridiculous.
And also,
it's a privilege to get to this country, then act like it. You know what I mean?
Most people who immigrate here legally are law-abiding citizens that want to contribute to the American society and the American economy. But then you have folks
do all
like
the jobs Americans don't want to do. I mean,
I'm talking about the ones who legally immigrate, but even the ones who illegally immigrate, they usually, in previous ways of immigration past, most folks are on their best behavior. These folks aren't. And it seems like, okay, we should just throw out your asylum claim, and instead of taking up resources from the court, we should just send you back, and like, that's it.
The end. As far as violent crimes, it's the one thing. I mean, I guess I would say rape is probably that one thing, but a violent crime while you are in a foreign country as a guest, I think you should be automatically deported, no matter who you are, no matter what country you're in. If I go to the Fiji Islands and show my ass like that, they should deport me. I mean, but I don't know why that would be beyond the pale. I mean, don't bring your bullshit to our country. We got enough of our own bullshit here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Disappointing. It's disappointing because personally, if I were the police, I'd call all of those kids' parents in if I could, if they are truly migrants and I can't reach them. I really have to wonder what is going on with our society, that the crimes that are most violent seem to be occurring from younger and younger people, and that's disappointing.
Well, these folks were all in their 20s. Only 2 of them were 19, 2 were 21 and 24, and another one was 22. So you can talk to their parents, but their parents, who knows what they're going to say. And to your point about bail, most people that supported bail reform said, hey, like, we want cashless bail for non-violent crimes.
Non-violent, right. That was my understanding, that it was about non-violent crimes, not violent crimes, let alone crimes of this nature. I don't know anybody supporting no bail for this kind of bullshit. You kidding me? I mean, if they can openly attack police officers, then what about the rest of the public? Then nobody's safe.
Right. So cashless bail at this point, you gotta ask, who was the judge and who was the prosecutor who decided we're not going to try to get any bail at this point? Because I want to know, was it a requirement from New York, from the state of New York or the city of New York City that said, hey, we just got rid of cashless bail altogether, regardless of what crime you commit? Or did a prosecutor say, hey, they're migrants, they don't have bail money anyway, and they can't get credit for bail money, so to get a bail bond, so therefore there's no point, they would just sit in jail, so we're not going to request it. I want to know, which one was it? Was it a soft prosecutor and a soft judge, or was it literally required by the state? Like, it was not an option. You had to let them out without making them pay anything. I'm not saying they should be stuck in jail, but you should have to pay something if you did something this egregious.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane that they got out. Again, it's the violent part. I mean, they kicked these police officers in the head. They didn't just like fight them and punch them in the stomach, which, I mean, is still not okay. But you start kicking people in the head when they're on the ground, that you're trying to kill them. So I don't understand how they could. But see, it's that kind of bullshit that makes the Democrats look nuts. You can't support that logically. You just cannot support it. And this has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with just common sense. I mean, we are a species of people that responds to punishment. That's why it works. That's why most people don't commit crimes. It's not because we're such good people. It's because most of us fear punishment. So if you can just whip cops' asses on TV, get arrested, and be home by dinner, why wouldn't they rob me or anybody else on the street? I mean, what would stop them if they're going to be released even faster? That's ridiculous. I don't support this at all. This is bullshit.
Also,
this is going to make Democrats lose.
What guarantees do you have that they're going to show up to court? They could just disappear.
Right.
They're here already illegally. They want asylum. If they say, okay, well, my asylum claim is probably going to get denied because of this, so I'm just going to go underground at this point and just become a ghost. I can pay somebody, I can get an under the table job and pay someone to get me some fake papers.
Pathetic. It really is. I'm in no way, shape, or form supporting this kind of nonsense. This is just, it's not logical and it's not common sense.
Yeah, let's talk about the aftermath. So Hochul says deport them. She's a Democrat. She definitely has to say that. As you mentioned, she barely won. And of course, Republicans are going to seize upon this. This is the type of thing that falls right into Trump's lap and falls right into the lap of anybody running.
Effective. This, I mean, man, you can't even get me to disagree. You can't get anybody with any common sense, politics aside, to think that what we witnessed is okay. That was attempted murder as far as I'm concerned, and it should be treated as such.
Right. And all they have to do is just clip this video.
Right.
And play it on a loop.
These idiots. You want to vote for that?
Exactly. And remember, the New York City mayor, he's an ex-cop, he's a Democrat, but he ran on public safety. So I'm surprised he hasn't issued any kind of a statement.
I think he's been focused on vetoing the city council's bill, which they did veto. New York City Council vetoed this bill where police officers would have to put in their notes and their reports everybody that they speak to or interact with when they're handling a situation.
Interesting.
And they also vetoed a solitary confinement ban.
Interesting.
So Adams was against both, and the council voted 42-9 to override Mayor Eric Adams' vetoes on solitary confinement and the bill to document police stops. So I'm for the solitary confinement ban. I think the bill to document police stops is short-sighted. I don't think it's the best way to utilize resources. So you're telling me every time a police officer interacts with the public on a situation, they have to take out their notepad and get every single person's name, phone number, and email address that they interact with? That's not logical.
Most of those folks aren't going to give you their name.
It's just how you're going to keep up with that. Like, look how much is involved in paperwork as it is. So according to ABC News, the How Many Stops bill on police data would require the NYPD to publicly report on police civilian investigative stops and consent searches, as well as to expand NYPD reporting on vehicle stops to include the justification and the type of offense observed. as well as
Okay,
other
so
data connected to vehicle stops.
okay, so it's not every person they talk to, it's every time they pull somebody over.
Yes. But
Okay.
any interaction that they are a part of, they're supposed to note down all the people that they talk to.
Well, that's not what what you just read said. What you just read was talking about stops.
Okay, but to publicly report on police, civilian, investigative stops, and consent searches.
Yeah, if you search somebody, I think you should have to write some notes on searching someone. But if you
Okay,
don't, so
I think I
if you just
misunderstood
simply
this. Let me see.
now, if you're just simply interacting with the public, if you're saying, "Hey, please move it along" or whatever, it's ridiculous to ask someone to write notes about that. But if you search someone, then yes, I think maybe you know, one sentence about searching someone and why isn't too much to ask. I definitely don't think that would
Wow.
actually stop people from wanting to search because you can literally write that. Chat GPT can write that for you.
Yeah, I mean, you can still write anything. I mean, what's the justification for it? You know, your partner is most likely going to co-sign. I mean, I don't know. To me, it just doesn't seem like the most effective policy we could push forward with. I get the solitary confinement. I mean, we have plenty of data to show that solitary confinement makes people go crazy. And if we know the majority of people are going to be released to the public, that's just ridiculous. Although New York uses the term restrictive housing, not solitary confinement.
Restrictive housing. That's funny.
Mhm.
So let's talk about housing really quick because people are wondering why this is going on in New York. Why are the governors of Florida and Texas sending people specifically to New York? Why aren't they sending them to San Francisco? For a while, I was predicting they would eventually start sending them to San Francisco as we got closer to the November election. But it is important to note, New York City has a right to housing law. And that is why they are sending migrants to New York City. Under the right to housing law, depending on how you interpret it, you could say any person in New York has a right to housing. And so therefore, the city of New York must provide shelter for them. And so what's going on is Mayor Adams wants the interpretation to be citizens of New York City, but activists are saying, no, you must interpret this as everyone, and we're going to sue you if you don't. And so until the New York City Council passes a bill that makes this clarification clear, until they pass a bill that says, actually, no, this is just for citizens of New York. This doesn't apply to migrants that get bused here or flown here, whatever, you're going to be stuck with this problem. And it's unfortunate because you have undocumented people who aren't in this current wave of migrants that may have come here 20 years ago who maybe should get that right to housing. Maybe the right to housing should apply to them. But if you just got here, I don't know. I don't know. But that's why this is happening in New York. That's why it's such a problem. Their hands are tied. They have to provide shelter for these folks
Yeah, but
until
there's an
they pass a bill.
impracticality to this.
Yeah,
You can't just be shipping 1,000 people here in a day, no notice, no resources. Like, just be practical about it. Hey, we can't house these people. We're going to send them to you, but we're going to send you some of our, I mean, most of the states that are sending us these people are states that rely upon money coming from our cities anyway. So I don't understand why one hand can't seem to wash the other.
Because it's a political play. Like they're
It's
obviously doing
shameful.
this to embarrass. Yeah, they're obviously doing this to embarrass the Democrats, embarrass New York, embarrass New York City, and help Trump win in 2024 in November, along with the rest of the Republican Party. And it's working because the Democrats have failed to pass a law in New York City that makes this more practical.
If the Democrats lose, it's their own fault.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on right now, and you can see the fallout. Of course, the police officers union is going to capitalize on this as well. That's their prerogative. I wouldn't blame them, and the Republican Party in general is going to capitalize on it. But I believe this comes down to just mismanagement of a democratic city, usually a deep blue city, sometimes a deep blue city, or a city that is thought of as deep blue. Same thing with San Francisco, same thing with Oakland, same thing with Portland, same thing with Seattle, same thing with Los Angeles.
Well, then good luck, democratic cities. You're going to help usher in The Handmaid's Tale, period, on this episode of Raw Food.